You are about to listen to another episode of That Sports Guys podcast, hosted by Craig Forrestall. Find Craig on Twitter at that_sports_guy. The That Sports Guys podcast is proudly featured by NFL Draft Diamonds, your draft coverage king. So sit back, relax, and enjoy some football talk.
Hello and welcome to another episode of That Sports Guys podcast. I am Craig Forrestall. You might know me from Twitter as at that_sports_guy. But tonight it is all about Idaho State wide receiver Tanner Connor. Tanner, what's going on with you tonight, my guy?
Nothing much. Just enjoying the day off.
Hey, you know what? I wish I could say the same. I had a pretty busy day around the house. My wife got the Christmas decorating bug, so I had to cave in. I had to give in because I got a 3-year-old, and he was so excited. He found his little snowman. We get to start Elf on the Shelf, so I had a really productive Christmas day. But Tanner, that's neither here nor there. Let's get back to you. You grew up in Washington. The school website says it was Kent, Washington. What was it like growing up there?
Yeah, I lived in Kent my entire life. Grew up in a family of 5, 2 younger brothers that we all played sports, all played the same sports, and we're very competitive with each other. Growing up in Kent was nice. It's growing now. It's getting close to 130,000, so it's a lot different than Pocatello, where I'm attending school. But I loved Kent. My high school was really fun to go to. I met a lot of friends there that I still have today. It was actually Kent Ridge was known. The high school I went to was known for its academics, so it was a good school to go to that prepared me for college really well.
And touching on that high school experience, you were also a standout, tremendous athlete, football, basketball, and track. And while a lot of people might think that you were always a football star on the high school level, you were actually dominant in track. I'm going to go through some of your track accomplishments. You were the 300-meter hurdle state champion, and you ranked 36th in the nation as a high school track athlete. So what was that recruiting experience like? Was it heavily focused on track? Was it split football track? Take us through that.
Yeah, so my senior year, signing day came and went for football, and I had no offers to go play ball anywhere. So what I did was just kind of focused on track after that because it was really the sport I was best at. And I ended up having a really good senior season, like you mentioned. One stayed in the 300s and got second in the 110s and put up some pretty good times, and was getting looks from a bunch of different schools for track. So, but I knew, and my dad and I talked about all the time, me still believing that I could play football and I had good potential in it. So every school I went to on a visit for track, I would always ask if there was an opportunity to play football. A lot of schools didn't really give me an eye or attention for that. They were either wanted me to be a track only guy or didn't have any connections to the football coaches as a track coach. Until I got to ISU when Hillary directly brought me to the football coaches, their offices. And so I showed them my film, and then a couple hours later they offered me on the spot, and talked to my dad. And it was, being a dual sport athlete is something that can be kind of overwhelming. But I figured if I never tried it, I never would have known how it worked out. And so I'm glad I did. And Hillary was a catalyst in that process. And so ISU ended up being the perfect place for me out of all the other options I had.
And you mentioned dual sport athlete. You still compete on the track team for Idaho State. And I want to ask you about a couple of record-breaking performances. So it says here that you were participating in the preliminaries of the 60-meter hurdles, and you broke the record with a time of 7.83 seconds. And then the next day, you re-broke that record with a time of 7.73, setting a new Big Sky Conference record, taking home the hardware. Tanner, did you know that you were running those times? Did it feel good from the jump? Take us through that, those 2 races.
Yeah, I mean, it's awesome to have the ISU record. I've broken it a few times, and breaking your record is always super fun because you can kind of really compete against yourself. Going up to conference, I felt really good. I was getting some physical therapy on my body, just get my body right before, and it was probably the best I've ever felt during a track season. In the prelims, my coach just told me just to stay relaxed and just run a consistent race, and so that's what I did. I didn't really push it or anything to go crazy or jeopardize crashing out in the hurdles. So in the prelims, I felt great, came out the blocks great, and then it was probably, I still think to this day, the prelim race was my cleanest race I've ever had as a collegiate hurdler. Running that 7.83 and re-breaking the record was awesome. And so the next day, after doing that, I knew I had more in the tank, and just my coach told me just to go for it and see what would happen. And I'd always done visualization techniques and like mental imagery, and I kind of like days before conference, I would always envision myself getting into that 7.7 mark. That was kind of my goal throughout the entire season. And so I was able to meet that running 7.73. It was interesting though, because when I won the finals race, I looked up on the board. The initial time that showed was 7.77, and so I was pretty happy about that. And I was ecstatic, and then they ended up rounding it down to 7.73. So couldn't have been more happy with that. And it's to this day the best collegiate race I've ever run.
And now, when it comes to being a dual sport athlete, when there's overlap between track and football and your schedule's pulling you in different directions, how do you and your coaches manage, where you will be at any given time? That way you're able to give your focus and attention to both.
Yeah, the first 2 or 3 years was really tough, especially during the springtime, because you'd have outdoor track overlapping with spring football. And as a football player, I really didn't make a name for myself until just last year, maybe last year and a half. And so when you're lower on the depth chart, you really don't have much pull in things that you can negotiate with coaching. So hadn't had an opportunity to prove myself yet. So I was going to practice for football, and then some days I'll go to track practice before that, or I would go to track practice on our off days. So I was doing double duty throughout the entire month of April, basically, when we had spring football, and it was tough. But Hillary was really good about load management, making sure I wasn't taking in too much volume when I was going to football practice and coming and doing some sprints with track. And once I ended up having some good success on the track, my football coaches kind of gave me a longer leash, so didn't have to attend every single practice or every single scrimmage. They let me go on some weekend meets, which was awesome too. So I got to the point where I was eventually splitting spring football and outdoor track half and half, and that's just attributed to both my coaches being very flexible and willing to work together. So it was tough to start out, but it ended up pretty good.
And now, Tanner, I want to move over to the football field because there were two other very talented wide receivers on roster with you in Michael Dean and Mitch Guller. What did you learn from those guys studying them as they were ahead of you for the first couple of years? And now what are you taking from them that you're showing to the younger guys as you take on that veteran role in the wide receiver room?
Yeah, we all came in the same class. I ended up redshirting my first year, and Mitch and Mikey went on to play for their next 4 years. But I learned a lot from them. I watched Mitch, especially being an outside wide receiver, a lot, and try to compare myself to him and see what he did so I can apply it to my game. From both of them, they were both tremendous athletes, and I think the one thing I got from both of them was just confidence. Those dudes were confident in their ability no matter what, no matter how the game was going, no matter how they were doing personally. Those guys had all the confidence in the world they could go out and beat the dude in front of them, and that was something I kind of struggled with early on. It was just having confidence on the field. So seeing those guys and watching them have really massive successful seasons multiple times in a row, and even seeing them have times where they weren't doing so good and still were confident in their ability and go out and be playmakers, rubbed off on me. And I watched that and I wanted to emulate it the best I could. And now that I'm in that position, my only purpose is really to make the younger guys feel like they're on the same level. Like I'm not above them, that we're all a same position group and working towards the same goal, which is a Big Sky Conference championship. So I never wanted the younger guys to feel like I have authority over them, I have seniority over them. I kind of want us all to be on the same level so we can learn from each other and develop that way.
And you touched on it within a couple of answers already. You mentioned how you broke out last season. You had 47 receptions for 792 yards and 8 touchdowns. Tanner, what was that moment, or when was that game when you thought to yourself, yeah, I'm here, I've arrived, I'm going to do something big this season?
Yeah, I don't know if we always truly arrive at where we want to be, but I think the game that really boosted my confidence and made me realize that I can play at this level and I can play above this level is that the Portland State game. I scored 3 touchdowns that game and just had a phenomenal game. And that was really when the fear of failure kind of started to dissipate for me, and that I was going out there looking to make plays instead of looking to make mistakes. So I'd say that Portland State game for sure.
And now let's move ahead to the upcoming season. What are you and the team looking forward to the most? What are some of the goals you've set within that locker room?
Yeah, of course, the goal is always a Big Sky Conference championship, but more importantly, it's just to rectify our last season. I think we had a lot of potential last season, and we really want to come out and show that we're better than what we put on film last year. We want to take advantage of every opportunity given to us, and just go out and show that we can be a force in this conference. And I think a lot of guys, it's a younger team. We lost a lot of seniors last year, and I think we have a lot of hungry guys who are going to help fulfill the goals we've made. So I think just coming out and being tenacious and fierce on the field, we're really just hoping to shock the conference and come out and be a completely different team than last year.
And then personally, Tanner, is there anything that you're hoping to showcase, to NFL teams or anything that you personally want to accomplish within this last season?
Yeah, I mean, just the general goal is just to do better than last season personally, just more yards, more touchdowns. For me, I think the most important thing is just to be consistent. I don't want to be high some games and low other games. I just want to be a consistent receiver that consistently makes plays that can consistently be counted on. And that way I can just help our offense function, because if you have a guy who can consistently make plays and be there and be accountable for your team, it's really hard to lose games. So that's gonna be my main goal, just being consistent on the field.
And then coming up to this season, where is the team now with its preparations? Have you had your fall practice period, or just take us through what the team is doing right now?
Yeah, barring all the quarantine lockdowns we've had over the last couple of months, we just ended up finishing a 3-week mini camp, which went really well. We got into pads and were able to hit each other for the first time in over a year. So that was good. As a team, I think we're super hungry to play. Like, you could see it in those practices during the mini camp. Dudes just want to get out there and just play. Like, not even necessarily make plays or prove anything to anybody. People just like to play the game of football. I think that's really important, is that when you have dudes who just love the sport and have a passion for it, you can see it on the field. So in terms of preparation, we're doing good. We're coming up on our max week for lifting this next week. So we've been training off-season weights while practicing, which has been really tough, but we made it through it. So I think the team is going to be prepared as long as we stay in the right mental state and in good physical form for these next month and a half before our season.
And Tanner, you're a big wide receiver. Combined with that athleticism and track background, what do you feel are some of your strengths as a wide receiver?
Yeah, I think the intangibles, like being a larger receiver and still being able to run as fast as I can, I think is my biggest strength. Overall athleticism is something that runs in my family, and being able to use that to the best of my ability, I think, would be my biggest strength. I don't think there's many receivers out there who are over 230 and can still run a 10.5 in the 100-meter. So I think that would be my biggest strength, is just things that really can't be taught, in terms of how high you can jump, how fast you can run, how strong you can be. That'd probably be my biggest strength going onto the field.
And I just want to know, Tanner, because the quarantine and everything that came about with the coronavirus situation throughout this year has led to some unique stories as to how athletes had to stay in shape and things they had to do to get creative around the house to get a workout in. Do you have any unique stories or anything that you did to stay in shape?
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that, because when everything officially got shut down, when the NCAA started canceling championships, I was just practicing for outdoor track. I was doing a hurdle workout and got the text on our phones that the season wouldn't be happening. So eventually ISU sent us home, and needed a place to work out. Me and my two younger brothers, all of us still wanted to keep training for our sports. So my dad ended up building a in-garage gym for us. He got a platform for Olympic lifting. He ended up installing a squat rack into the wall. We had a bench press and a bunch of weights to go with it. And we really trained there for 3 months, and it was super good because I didn't lose any progress when I ended up coming back to ISU to start training again, because my dad had gone through the work to help build that garage gym. And so my brothers and I were completely blessed to have that. A lot of people didn't have any access to work out at all. So just having that was super nice.
And so was it just like old school lifting competitions between you and the brothers, like who can throw up the most weight right here, or did you stick to a pretty structured routine for the most part?
Coach Ryan did a good job of programming for us. He actually individualized our workouts for each player. So depending on what kind of equipment you had, he would program a certain amount of workout for you. So I was in the fully equipped category, meaning I had pretty much access to everything. So he was programming for me, and I was able to continue lifting just like we were in the spring. It's funny though, because my brothers and I's workouts would overlap sometimes. In between sets, we have a basketball hoop right outside, and we go play 1-on-1 in between sets, just as that competitive fire never really seems to go away.
And then I just got to know, because of the athleticism, are you like a really good dunker? Like, could you win a dunk contest?
Yeah, I consider myself pretty good. I actually have a video of myself touching my head to the rim from a month or two ago, and so I can get up there. It's fun. I'm really not too good at basketball, and it sucks because it's really my favorite sport, but I'm just not skill savvy in the sport. But I love to go around, just open gym, and just throw down some dunks. We test vertical on Friday, so we'll see where I'm at there. But last time I checked, I can touch my head to the rim, which is a pretty good feat for me.
And where can I find that video on Twitter or anything?
I actually have it on my phone. My dad uploaded on Facebook. I can send it to you personally though, if you want it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that'd be awesome. And I just got to know, because in the open gym, a guy that can, just run and jump like you, are you usually a pretty high pick in those games because you're just a lot of fun to throw alley oops to?
Yeah, dudes definitely love having me on their team just because I'm like that hustle player. I just get the boards and don't I kind of just pass the ball and get the boards and facilitate for my team. But guys love throwing me alleys. I mean, when I first get here, every time we have pickup games, like I always get a couple, and then after people get tired of me dunking, they kind of start to look for fast breaks and kind of come wall me off, so I can't do it. But opens up opportunities for the rest of the players. So it is what it is. But I've definitely we've had some teammates have thrown some pretty good ones for me and had some gym clears before. So
Awesome. So now, Tanner, I want to go ahead and I want to transition to a couple questions to get to know you, the non-athlete. So if you're ready to jump down that rabbit hole, I'm ready to go with you.
yep, let's do it.
All right, perfect. The first question I have lined up for you is, when was the last time you used YOLO as an excuse to do something, and what was it?
Man, the last time I even heard of YOLO when I was in middle school. That's a almost extinct term, but the last time I used it to do something, I don't know. Back at a church camp, we had this thing called the blob. And it's like a giant inflatable that sits on the water. And it was in middle school, and I only weighed about 140, 150 pounds. And we had like the dads and all their kids were there launching each other. And my dad was pretty big. He played football in college at the next level. And he weighed about 270, 280 pounds. And people were like, man, you should let your dad launch you. And I was like, I don't know. And then eventually I caved in, did it, and ended up like getting launched 40 feet in the air. So that was probably the last time I've used YOLO as an excuse to do something. It was terrifying, but it was a good experience getting launched by your own dad on the lake.
What is the most interesting or memorable college class that you took?
I'd have to say it'd be my philosophy class. Not necessarily because of the interesting stories, but I think I learned a lot in that class. And I had a young professor from Yale University. I've never met a dude more intelligent than him. He was super intelligent. It was just a general ed I was doing, but I ended up taking more philosophy after that because of him. And I just learned a lot of things I didn't think I was going to learn in college. You try like, I think the best thing we learned in that class is how to debate, because you could kind of go through arguments, and then he taught us how to pick arguments apart based on their premises. And it's really useful against other people, but it's also very annoying when you constantly pick apart other people's arguments and they don't like talking to you anymore. But it was a cool skill to learn in the meantime.
What was your least favorite chore or household duty growing up?
Man, and you can ask my mom to this day, I hated making my bed, and I never saw the importance of it or why it had to happen. Nobody was ever coming upstairs to look at my room during family gatherings, but she insisted on me making it, and she would be widely disappointed to see that I still to this day do not make my bed every day.
If you were invisible for a day, what would you do, Tanner?
If I was invisible for a day, well, the PS5 is released tomorrow. So if I was invisible tomorrow, I'd just go into Walmart and snag myself one and then go home. That's probably the thing I would use it for.
And the final question I have lined up for you tonight, if I gave you $100,000 to start any kind of business that you wanted, what would you do?
I think I would start a business with non-diminishing return, meaning that I would start a business that wouldn't help many people. But I've always struggled with finding shoes. I have a size 14 and a half shoe, and I'm a taller guy, so I think I would start a business for guys who have bigger feet and need finding shoes anywhere besides Nordstrom Rack and Ross. So I think I would start a business strictly for those guys out there who are struggling to find shoes, or maybe even guys who have really long legs and can't seem to find pants that fit them or shirts that fit them awkwardly. Because if you're tall and slim, it's really hard to find clothes nowadays. I think I would start something that would help those guys out. I'm not sure how successful it would be, though.
I think you would have more of a market than you think. Ladies and gentlemen, that is Tanner Connor, wide receiver for Idaho State. Pay attention as him and the rest of the crew get ready to hit the field this upcoming spring. He has big plans for himself and the team. Until next time, everybody stay safe and be easy. He's Tanner Connor. I'm Craig Forstall, and we're out.
Hey everybody, Craig Forstall. Thanks for tuning in and listening to another episode of That Sports Guys podcast. Make sure to follow me on Twitter at @that_sports_guy to catch all the latest updates and podcast episodes. Until next time, stay safe and be easy.